Well, good evening to everyone. I'm John Oldenburg. I'm a professor of electrical and electronic engineering at Sacramento State here, and I have the privilege of welcoming you all to the first STEM Scholars Lecture for the fall 2010 semester. I'd like to begin this evening by expressing our sincere appreciation to Capital Public Radio and to the Office of Public Affairs at Sacramento State for their support of the Center for STEM Excellence and this STEM Scholars Lecture Series. Our speaker for this evening is Dr. Amir Jose Macari. Dr. Macari received his PhD degree in civil engineering from the University of Colorado at Boulder in 1989, and he began his academic career at the University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez. In 1992, he was awarded a White House NSF Presidential Fellowship by President George Bush, which marked the beginning of his career-long involvement with public policy issues as related to science and technology. In 1993, Dr. Macari joined the faculty of the Georgia Institute of Technology with a joint appointment in the School of Civil Engineering and the School of Public Policy. In the following year, he was invited to help draft President Clinton's major science policy document entitled Science in the National Interest. 1998 saw him moving to Louisiana State University as chairman and Bingham Stewart Distinguished Professor in the Department of Civil Engineering at LSU. It was there that he and other colleagues had the foresight to form the LSU Hurricane Center that was later destined to play a significant role in the nation's recovery from Hurricane Katrina. In 2001, Dr. Macari accepted a science policy position in Washington, D.C. as the director of the Centers of Research Excellence in Science and Technology program. He served in that position for 2 years before returning to academia as the dean of the College of Science and Technology at the University of Texas at Brownsville. His considerable academic achievements were recognized in 2004 by his induction into the National Academy of Engineering of Mexico. In 2006, he was inducted into the very prestigious Mexican Academy of Science. In the fall of 2006, Sacramento State had the good fortune to be able to lure Dr. Macari away from the great state of Texas and bring him to this campus as the dean of our College of Engineering and Computer Science. As a member of the university search committee for his recruitment, I recall that we were asked by our then provost, Dr. Rick Brown, to look for a dean who could be the face of the college, not only in our local region, but statewide, nationally, and internationally. Someone who could be effective in establishing the broad range of industrial and governmental partnerships that are necessary to support the mission of CSU's Capitol campus. In that particular regard, I believe we greatly exceeded Dr. Brown's expectations. It's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for this evening's STEM Scholar Lecture, Dr. Amir Jose Macari.
Thank you, John, very much. John omitted to say that for the past 3 years he has been the Associate Dean for the college and has been truly the right-hand man and invaluable member of our college. Just this past, just a month ago, less than a month ago, he announced his early retirement. So he is now part-time with the college, although I suspect that he's working a lot more than part-time because I see his email messages coming in all over the place, even on weekends. So I appreciate that introduction, John. I also want to make sure that I clear something. It was George Bush, father, the one that gave me the award. So I just, we have to be clear about some of these things, John mentioned thanking Capital Public Radio and Public Affairs. Both of these organizations have been wonderful in promoting this lecture. It is being streamlined right now through cyberspace to a lot of people watching out there in their computers, hopefully a lot of people. If not, at least my mom and my, sister is watching tonight. Public Affairs through Associate Vice President Gloria Moraga, who's here in the audience, created a very nice video to promote a little bit about what we do at Sacramento State regarding smart grid. And I would like to start, before starting my presentation, I would like to show this video. So if you bear with me, here it comes. Well, smart grid is the unification of communications and controls and sensors onto the existing electric grid. What it's going to do is going to be able to allow us to see how electricity is flowing from a plant that is generating it all the way into the home and into the appliances.
I'm on the more of the user end of picking up those types of signals opposed to like a power company that's sending out. I want to save the user money. We need to impact the people as quick as possible.
Consumers will be able to monitor their electric usage and, in so doing, be able to curtail the use and save. So not only will they be spending less money on electricity, they will be impacting our environment less by having a smaller carbon footprint.
In California, there are a number of power generators sitting idle for just the peak demand. The peak demand is usually about 50 to 60 days a year, and rest of the time they're sitting idle. If we can curb the usage of the power during those peak times and balance it out that we can use some of the use at night, then there's no need for so many power generators.
The power industry has been sitting the same for the last 60 to 70 years. It's the same infrastructure, same loads, but our population gets bigger and our energy consumption gets bigger. So how can I change that as an electrical engineer?
We are unique in the sense that we are the first CSU to have a research center funded by the California Energy Commission. And the reason that we are the first center is because we have the strongest power engineering program in the state of California. We have a Homeland designated center of excellence in cybersecurity, and we have a long tradition in renewable energy research at this university. So with these three legs to this stool, it makes us be the perfect choice to have the California Smart Grid Center here at Sacramento State. Thank you very much, Gloria. That was very nice. So with that then, let me move into the title of the presentation is really Supporting an Innovative, Energy Efficient Future. And I would like to acknowledge a few other contributions by different members of our community. First, again, Jill Traynor, Sharon Purcelli, and the entire team from the Sacramento State STEM Center. Jill Traynor is my, we are co-directors of the STEM Center, and she has been a tremendous leader here at Sac State, being the Dean of the College of Natural Sciences and Math. And I was just telling her a little while ago that since I'm up here giving one of these lectures, I expect to see her sometime next semester, perhaps, giving a lecture herself. The Office of Governmental and Public Affairs, which is a brand new division here at Sac State, with now a Vice President, Phil Garcia, to which Gloria Moraga works very closely with. They've been great. Facility Services, the Division of Facility Services, Sacramento State. You will see through the presentation how involved they have been. And Facility Services is the organization that really brings us all the light, all the energy, all of the different infrastructure to our campus. And we are in the process of upgrading everything that we do here and become a model program in the entire state of California and the nation. President Alexander Gonzalez has been a tremendous leader since the moment I came in to Sac State, and I clearly remember about 3.5 years ago, I've been here 4 years, so half a year into my tenure, he said, Amir, I need for you to start something in STEM. That means science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I need for you to work with SMUD to see if we can develop something of a program in energy efficiency. I'd like to report tonight to Dr. Gonzalez that I think mission accomplished. Who said that? Or at least we're on our way there, huh? The College of Engineering and Computer Science, all of my colleagues that are here, students, faculty members, if you could just raise your hand, please. Tremendous support from all our folks, and it is, in fact, the faculty, the students, and the staff that deliver a program like this. It is not one that comes from the top, but one that comes from the bottom. The Sacramento Municipal Utility District, SMUD, we are becoming integral partners with them, and as a matter of fact, over the coming months and coming years, you will see a co-branding that every time you hear about SMUD, you will be hearing about Sacramento State, and when you hear about Sacramento State, in the same hand, you will be hearing about SMUD. PG&E is a force to reckon with. It's a huge, one of the largest utilities in the country, and has been promoting a lot of innovation. Of course, lately they've been a little bit in the news with negative things. Certainly, the San Bruno disaster is a very sad thing. But before that, in Bakersfield, there were some issues regarding smart meters, which I'm happy to report today that PG&E was correct, and the consumers were really not well informed as to what they were doing. Next, you can see the California Energy Commission in bigger letters than the rest. And I'm happy that as I was saying that, Steve Gadari, I see him walking into the audience. So please report to all your colleagues at the California Energy Commission that we really appreciate the help and collaboration that we've had with you. The Director of Research for the PEER program, right now, Mike Gravely, has been almost a godfather to us, a mentor, and he has really guided us through, and that's why we were able to have this, this great research center here. We've received tremendous funding through the department, the U.S. Department of Energy, through the stimulus package. So if people tell you we don't know where those stimulus dollars have gone, some of it has come to here to Sacramento, some of it has come to Sacramento State, and a lot of it you will be seeing over the months and years to come being deployed in infrastructure throughout the Sacramento region. And lastly, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, who through our colleague Isaac Ganza, Isaac, if you could raise your hand, thank you. He is the director of the Center for Information Assurance and Security, which is a cybersecurity center, and I'll explain why that is so important to Smart Grid. The presentation today, I want to have it divided into a few things. First, I want to do an overview of what energy use in the United States, climate change, the environmental impacts, environmental legislation, and some of the energy efficiency efforts that we have led in this state and throughout the nation over the past 20 to 30 years. Hopefully, this will set the stage to why it is so important to be involved in energy conservation and to try to do anything we can through technological development to improve the way we use energy and the ways for us to, as we use energy, provide less impact into our environment. After that, then I'll give a quick overview of what is Smart Grid, what are the challenges and dreams of Smart Grid, because this is something that is just starting. It is not something that is already going on. It is an evolution that we will see. Smart Grid at Sacramento State, what it represents to this university, and really to this entire region, and the development of the California Smart Grid Center. So first, let me start with this very complicated slide that comes from our colleagues from Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, National Laboratories, which they present the estimated U.S. energy use in 2008. If you look there at the left column, you will see a representation of energy supply through solar, nuclear, hydro, wind, geothermal, natural gas, coal, biomass, and petroleum, fossil fuels down here. So you see that this area right here of green is a majority of it. It is over a third of the energy consumption that we use in the United States is attributed to oil, and the great majority, 26% of it, is really related directly to transportation industry. Airlines, in cars for the most part. Biomass plays a very small role, only 3.8%. If you move up, coal represents about 22%, and natural gas, 23%. So fossil fuels and products that generate greenhouse gases really are the major contributors to our energy usage. If you look up here at renewable resources such as solar, okay, I'll put in nuclear for right now, hydro, wind, geothermal, all of those are very, very small. And the challenge right now is to see how we can improve, how we can increase these while we decrease our dependency on oil. We become an energy independent country. We lose the dependency that we have on Middle East oil, and perhaps then and only then will we be able to walk away from all the wars that we're currently fighting in the Middle East. So it's very, very interesting slide. Go and find it, look at it, study it, because the first time that I look at it really opened my eyes to how we used all these services. Right here, then we look at how the energy is consumed through residential usage, about 11.5%, commercial, about 8.5%, industrial usage, about 24%, and finally in transportation area, about 28%. So transportation is the big gorilla in the room. Now, looking at our Earth's atmosphere, and when you look at the real picture and you realize that this tiny little sliver, which is barely 30 kilometers thick, is the only thing that protects us from our environment and is able to protect us from ultraviolet rays that the sun delivers. It is very, very sensitive area. How can we protect our planet, and how can we respect the sliver that we see here, that it is our atmosphere? The first thing that we look at is greenhouse effect. We see solar radiation coming in, all of the powers moving in. Some of it gets bounced back to to outer space through clouds. Some of it bounces on the Earth and gets again, there is only some of it that gets absorbed by the Earth's atmosphere. However, as we create these greenhouse gases, we see that they permit the rays to come in, but the infrared radiation emitted to the Earth's surface, much of it tries to bounce away, but it gets held back. And if we look at numbers, and this is wattage per square meter. So if we had a 342 watt bulb over a square meter, that is what represents the sun's power coming into planet Earth. Much of it, again, or a good portion of it, gets bounced back into space, but about half of it gets absorbed by Earth. The problem then comes in with infrared emissions. The infrared emissions then, 350 watts per square meter, bounce back, but a lot of it stays in our Earth because greenhouse gases don't permit it to go out. It's almost like having your car sitting out in the sun when the windows rolled up and inside the heat is generated. It tries to get out, but those windows are not permitting it. So the greenhouse gases would be an analogy to those windows. If we were only able to lower the windows or open a sunroof and let that heat escape, we would not be warming up the planet as much as we are. We look at the variation of carbon dioxide and temperature over the past 1,000 years. And what we see that over 1,000 years ago, the temperature remained fairly constant for almost 1,000 years until the Industrial Revolution came in. And we started the internal combustion engine, and we started emitting greenhouse gases through the use of this energy. And now what we see is an ever fast increasing exponential line that in the past 150 years, temperatures on Earth have increased from 13.7%, somewhere in the order of about 55 degrees Fahrenheit, this Celsius, to about 57, 58 degrees Fahrenheit, 14.3 degrees. That is an increase that we say, okay, well, it's a half a degree or 1 degree. What is the problem with that? The same thing goes for carbon dioxide, that we have seen it over the past 1,000 years, simply oscillating as forces of nature occur. Sometimes there's a volcano eruption, sometimes there's ice ages, all of those things happening. But now we see the drastic effects. And all of this that we see here is attributed to man and to women as well. So the big challenge right here is how can we reduce these fossil fuel dependency? How can we increase these up here as we're moving into a new era? Oh, I should go back and just show that in electricity generation, we see that coal is about 20% of it. Only 6% comes from natural gas. Nuclear, running out of batteries here. 8.5%, very little out of solar, very little out of any other area. So the electricity usage is about 40% of the consumption that we see here today. This is a picture that I found today in the internet. It shows what the internal combustion engine results are, emissions of toxic gases. It is a result of what we see in the environment. This is a picture of Los Angeles as you're coming in through the canyon, and all of these vehicles that are part of urbanization. Now this is LA, and this is a state that has 30 million people, a country that has about 300 million people. My colleagues here, Jay and Karen Halverson, had just come back from China, where we know that there are over 1 billion people, and they want to have the same standards of living that the Americans have. Multiply these, break down these canyons, blow them all up, dynamite them, and open up freeways, and it still won't be enough room for us to be able to satisfy that desire by other developing countries and industrialized nations into what is creating us a problem these days. So I go back to this picture too. What happened to the electric car? I remember that as I was a professor at Georgia Tech in 1996, electric vehicles were coming on. Everybody was very excited about the future. We were going to be able to replace the internal combustion engine. But suddenly, something happened that killed the internal combustion engine. What we see here is, again, the result of that data that I just showed you. And this fellow up here is Vice President Al Gore, who had to take a lift all the way up to be able to post the last point of his data on CO2 emissions into the environment. And this comes straight out of An Inconvenient Truth, which is a big Hollywood production, an Oscar winner. Colleague of ours, friend to this university, and former student at Sac State, Tom Hanks, the actor. Let me play a short video about the electric car and what killed the electric car and why. Do we have sound? Somehow it got turned off. Sharon? Do you know? Can you hear it? Yep.
In 1996, electric cars
We practiced it before.
they were quiet and fast, produced no.
It's an interesting video, so I do want you to hear it.
10 years later, these futuristic
Okay, here it goes. No? Okay.
In 1996, electric cars began to appear on roads all over California. They were quiet and fast,
We don't know what's happening?
no exhaust.
Pardon me? No. There it goes.
In 1996, electric cars began to appear on roads all over California. They were quiet and fast, produced no exhaust, and ran without gasoline. 10 years later, these futuristic cars were almost entirely gone. What happened? Why should we be haunted by the ghost of the electric car?
The exciting thing about this is the cost of operating the car is the same as if you were driving a typical gasoline car, but the gasoline only costs 60 cents a gallon.
I plug it in at night, and when I need to drive it, I unplug, drive it away.
Believe it or not, that sucker goes. That thing will take you so fast you could get a ticket.
Wow, I didn't know this existed. How come I don't know about this? Have you seen this on TV?
People who control the marketplace today, the oil companies, have a strong incentive to discourage alternatives.
They make too much money with their technological stagnation in the internal combustion engine.
For the last 15 years, they've been telling us the fuel cells are 10 to 15 years old.
There's still roughly 1 trillion barrels worth of oil in the Earth's crust. That's $100 trillion worth of business yet to be done.
General Motors made a commitment to the Hummer because they could see the Hummer would make them money.
The electric vehicle is not for everybody. It can only meet the needs of 90% of the population.
We're up against the automobile industry, the oil industry. It's David versus Goliath.
Who killed the electric car? Lack of corporate wisdom.
In my opinion, it's big oil. The murder was committed by the General Motors company.
What's interesting, you're going to be shredding some new cars. Why are you shredding them up?
A little bit of a mystery, really.
That seems like a shame.
I think it will go down as one of the biggest blunders in the history of the automotive industry.
Well, that puts it in perspective. And right now what we're experiencing is the same type of lobbying because the state of California is under attack right now by oil companies that are outside of our state. And SB 23, Senate Bill 23, looks at changing all of the advances that we've made in California since 2005, when the legislature, the Senate, and the governor, all of them from different parties, came together to try to address the needs of California and how the state was going to lead the way in energy efficiency and environmental protection. So, AB 32 is under attack right now, and this is going to be my only political commentary other than George Bush dad and son. I am a strong supporter of AB 32, and even though the home that I bought here in 2006 is now worth $250,000 less than when I paid for it, I am proud to be a Californian simply because of that environmental legislation, that it is leading the way, not just in this country, but around the world. And if we defeat SB 32 through, AB 32, through this new Proposition 23, Prop 23, we are going to be going backwards and really serving the oil companies' interests and walking away from all of this wonderful product development that we've done in clean technology. Just like the electric cars that we saw before, all of the smart grid development that we've done up to this point, all of the energy efficiency benefits that we've brought to the state of California will be gone. So I don't know if I can endorse anything as a dean, but I'll tell you that I really like AB 32, and I don't like it all as Proposition 23. Okay, that's where we'll leave it at. Because this is what can happen. When climate change, when the climate changes, everything will change. And if you want to see your kids really worry about something and wanting to be environmentally conscious, you show them a picture of this polar bear jumping to try to get into a terrain where they can live, because our glaciers are disappearing, because water, the oceans are increasing, and all our coastal regions will be affected from that. So, again, AB 32 has challenged us as a state of California to become a lot more energy conscious, to bring in a lot more renewable energy, and to be stewards for the environment by by decreasing our carbon footprint in this country. The state, California does it, the rest of the country will do it. When the United States does it, the rest of the world will do it. So I hope that we continue along that line. If we look at energy use and what the impact of environmental legislation has been, we see here a plot of simply refrigeration, okay? Your refrigerators in your homes. First of all, back then, I think they were called ice boxes. Little by little, they started putting in new devices, and air conditioning and refrigeration started coming in. A lot of it with freons and different gases that actually resulted to be greenhouse gases as well. So we see that the impact on usage and kilowatt per year by our country increased only due to refrigeration. Well, this was a wonderful discovery. We were able to keep food for more than 1.5 or 2 days. We were able to keep it for 4 or 5 or 6 days. So it really is an advancement to our society. However, we can be advancing our society at the same time that we're energy conscious, and that is what sustainability is all about. So when governmental legislation started telling people, look, you can't be wasting this much energy just for your refrigerator, things started coming down in usage. 1978 California standards, 1980 California standards, 1987 California standards, and as California progressed, the rest of the country then came on board, and then it became an issue that moved through the whole country, and now we're almost in energy use, back in refrigeration, back to where we were in the 1940s. It is tremendous. However, what has happened in the past 20 years, estimated standby energy. These are all of the devices that we have in our home. Our microwave, the lights are on. The VCR and DVD lights are on. You plug in your cell phone, and even when it's not plugged in, that cell phone control is heating up. Curling irons, I tell my daughters, please don't do that. Wear your well, they do it straightening irons. They got curly hair like I do. So wear your hair curly. Curly hair is beautiful. No, they don't like it, so they have to waste energy in order to curl. All of these things are contributing to a tremendous increase in energy consumption, and it is a time now that manufacturers of these devices are going to have to start saying, look, we're going to have a standby mode where no energy is going to be drawn. Actually, even Gloria Moraga told me that she's unplugging her curling iron every morning now after coming to work. That is the type of conscience that we need. That is what we need to. But only by knowledge, by information, can we empower our citizens. Now, the good news, though, is that throughout time, California and the great state of New York, where the New York Yankees are from, have almost equaled the energy efficiency, while the rest of the country, many other states, have not followed suit. We see here that right now we are starting to beat New York in energy efficiency, and that is no accident. That comes from state-driven legislation that when the United States legislation comes through and adheres to both what New York and the state of California are doing, we're going to see a lot more savings in energy. Now, Governor Schwarzenegger may be a person that is not so popular these days. Furloughs, unemployment, budget deficits, all sorts of different things. But I can tell you this man has been a champion for the environment, and both him and his wife really deserve the credit for this. This is back when he spoke to the United Nations. California, because of its unique position, is on the cutting edge of what is to come. What we're doing is changing the dynamic, preparing the way, and encouraging the future. Arnold Schwarzenegger. And as I say, the dream, the California dream, is still alive, doing well for future generations, but we all need to do our part. Now let me switch a little bit into smart grid. As I mentioned before, President Gonzalez told me that he needed to have a research component related to sustainability as part of Destination 2010. This was 4 years ago. And he encouraged me to go and seek the different places. And he has been behind us, supporting us all the way. So President Gonzalez really deserves a lot of the credit of where we're going, where the university is going, and as we're partnering with other entities around the state. I needed to show a picture of his because he has done really, really well. I'm proud to be working under his administration. So what is the smart grid anyway, and why should I care? That should be the question that perhaps most of us in the audience would be asking. And the definition of smart grid is that it is a generic label for the application of computer intelligence and networking abilities to decades-old electricity distribution system. Like my student said, 60 to 70 years, we haven't done much. But now we are bringing in the power of computer intelligence and networking. Smart grid initiatives seek to improve operations, maintenance, and planning by making sure that each component of the electric grid can both talk and listen to, and as we're doing that, another major component of the smart grid technology will be its automation. This is a picture of what the energy use was in California in 2009. We see that in megawatts, it is a fairly steady state until we reach those dreaded summer months, especially here in Sacramento and other regions inland, certainly not the coast the same way. But there are very, very distinct peaks. Now, we need to generate electricity. As a utility, we need to have all the way up here. Because if we don't have the amount of electricity provided by our utility companies to the amount that we're demanding, what we're going to see is blackouts and brownouts. So we have companies that generate this much electricity just for these 2 days a year. If we were able to somehow curtail some of that or be able to store the energy in order to better flatten out this and store it in on these very, very hot days when we all go home and turn our air conditioning all at the same time, we would be able to save, and actually we would be able to decommission many, many power plants. Peak demand is a daily struggle. If you go to the California Independent System Operators, which is basically a Wall Street, but instead of dollars and investments, they're talking about energy. They worry every day of how this curve is going to look. This is the peak demand that early morning, nobody is really using much electricity, except for those curling irons that are still plugged in. However, when we reach 4:30, everybody starts to go home. Kids come home from school, turn on the televisions. Then the parents come in, turn on the air conditioners, start cooking, and we see a tremendous need to satisfy the demand. Most of it comes in at 7 o'clock from residential users, as we see the peak demand ends at around 4 o'clock for commercial and industrial, because plants usually close down and people go home. So there are 50 hours a year that represent 0.6%, almost 1% for 50 hours a year. 100 hours a year represent almost 10% of the usage that we have. How could we eliminate this portion of it and flatten it out and then not need that much production of energy? We see here the same curve that I showed before, except that we took out New York, but we see the U.S. Energy consumption. We see California energy consumption per capita, and we see the Europeans. Well, it's probably because they don't take showers and they don't need to heat up the water. But they are more energy efficient, you know, and they worry much more about what the environment is. And by the way, they're paying very high rates for this energy. So they really make a big deal out of it. Use your energy only when you need it. The problem in this country now is that as the electric systems stress out, it leads to more outages. And I don't know how many of you remember, but in 2003, just 2 years after 9/11, New York City and all of surrounding Con Ed territory had a blackout. People thought that it was another attack on the United States, but it was a self-driven attack. It was done by us because it heated up, and actually this past summer, they experienced similar things. They had brownouts, which fortunately we learned from the 2003 event that did not lead to complete blackouts. Along the way here in Sacramento, SMUD has been a tremendous partner to us. They have been a utility that, even though they're very small and serve only a small portion of California's citizens, only our region, they have been a very innovative, very proactive, and right now, because of funding that we have received through the U.S. Department of Energy, we are looking at a future with great energy savings, great energy efficiency, and finally the infusion of the smart grid. SMUD is now working on net zero homes. We are looking at homes that will not impact the environment, that will not need any energy from outside of their region. Solar, rooftop solar cells, PV, photovoltaic cells in all homes, energy efficiency, and this is the wave of the future. We are going to have a lot of these things. But how can we then integrate these solar cells, and when they're not being used for the homes or for that residential area, how can they export it to their neighboring areas? That is the only way that we can do it, with communications and with the internet, with the power of the smart grid. Also, by 2030, and by the way, this is legislation that has come in through AB 32, we're looking at commercial buildings being net zero as well. This is going to be another big challenge, because we have a lot of big buildings here downtown through the Department of General Services, and the state of California right now is broke, and we're not able to bring in the new infrastructure, even though this is the time to be investing. Hopefully we're able to come up with some solutions to that. Coming back to those peak demands, typically in a very hot summer day, you see the temperature increasing, and as the temperature is increasing, the usage of energy increases as well. Off-peak rate, on-peak rate, and super-peak rates. Now, there are some days, like for example, the first week that I moved to Sacramento, 2006, June 12th was 95 degrees. June 13, 98, 14th, 102, went up to 117 degrees. There was nothing that I could do to cool up my house. I said, what the heck did we do? Where did we move to? And all my friends would say, it's dry heat. And I say, dry heat, my you-know-what. This was very hot. Well, there are certain days a year that the heat is so extreme that the peak demand is incredibly high. And that is when it is most important that we curtail the use. Because if we are going to demand our utility company, PG&E, San Diego Gas and Electric, Southern California Edison, or SMUD in our area, to be able to provide us energy to satisfy up to this levels, we're going to have problems. It is going to be very expensive, and at the same time, we're negatively impacting the environment every day. We need to reduce this. So the only way to do it is time of usage rates. We're going to tell people, okay, fine. You want to go home on this day that is 110 degrees and crank up your air conditioner to 72 degrees and generate this, you're going to be paying 3 times the amount that you would otherwise be paying. It is no longer going to be on tiers that if you use so much energy one day or so much energy the next day. This is going to be based on peak demand. And that is what we're working for. Now, customers may not like this because, especially on a day that it's 112 degrees, we want to crank up our air conditioner to 72 degrees. But that is when the citizens will have to rally and contribute and be part of the solution and not part of the problem. So for this great peak right over here, that it is critical peak pricing, perhaps they will be paying 40 to 50 cents a kilowatt hour, when normally they would be paying around a dime, 10 cents, 13 cents per kilowatt hour. Pricing of energy will be used on time of day. And for that, then we need to alert the customer. Hey, watch out. You're going to be charged 40 or 50 cents per kilowatt hour. And don't be surprised at the end of the month when you get a $500 or $600 bill, when you normally have been paying $100 to $130. So that is where the smart grid comes into play. That is where the smart meters come into play, and because they will be a fundamental portion of the infrastructure. They will be communicating with the utility company, saying how much usage is coming out of there. They will be able to charge per use at a particular time, but at the same time, hopefully, if we do it right, they will be communicating with inside the home as well and telling you, don't use your washing machine, definitely don't use your dryer, don't use your electric range during these periods of time. Wait until after peak price, because if not, you're going to be not only impacting the environment negatively, but paying a lot more money. Generation and transmission and distribution happens like this. A utility company generates electricity either through a hydroelectric plant, a gas plant, a coal burning plant, or a petroleum plant, or a solar energy plant. Then they get in all this voltage, and they have transformers, power transformers that increase the power, and then they transmit the electricity over those very large towers that you see all over the roads. They go into megawatts, megavolts of power that comes across. Now, there are transformers and substations along the way in order to reduce the voltage. And finally, there's another set of distribution substations that then reduce the voltage back to what the homes can handle. And your transformer in the home, which is the one that you really notice, because when that one blows, your electricity's gone, it reduces it back to 110 or 220 voltage, which is what we send into the home. Some residential, some industrial and commercial buildings require higher voltage. So these distribution substations know where to funnel the electricity. the smart grid will be able to have a lot more information because we're going to have sensors here, 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 and inside the home and inside the buildings. Now, all of that information is going to come into a computers, and we're going to be able to optimize how the usage is done. This is a picture that I grabbed from PG&E, our colleagues Kevin Dasso from PG&E, showing, again, how the power plants, either natural gas, nuclear power plants, or petroleum-based plants, or even coal-burning plants, added to the newer, more cleaner energy, such as hydro plants, wind farms, or solar plants. Then they transmit their energy, the voltage, over to distribution stations and into the home. What we will see now is that each home is going to have some sort of rooftop solar because we're going to be plugging in, coming in from work, again at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, plugging in our electric vehicles if they don't get killed again like they were in 1996, plugging them in. But in order for us to be able to do that, we have to store the energy. We don't want to have to use that peak energy. We want to use the energy throughout the day, store it in very large batteries, and smaller batteries in the homes, distributed storage. So we will have batteries in each one of the homes that will be able to store the energy. That way we will able to balance the use of energy and, again, not be exposed to this high peak. In order to be able to do that, though, we're going to have the power of the internet and communications and sensors all over the place. All of this will be done wirelessly, sending information through radio frequencies or through all sorts of different protocols. I mentioned renewable energy. This is a picture from Arizona in which it shows how solar energy is generated. And obviously, as a cloud comes in, it covers the solar panels and doesn't generate much. So it's somewhat erratic, but it grows to a peak at around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when it gets really, really the hottest, 5 maybe. And little by little, towards the evening, it starts going down. These are the types of photovoltaic that we see. And by the way, the region here in Sacramento region, is now one of the leaders in the entire state of California with production of solar PV. We have, over the past 4 years, through concerted effort by all sorts of agencies, including the Sacramento Area Regional Technology Alliance, which I see Dave Sanders here, the chair of SARTA, we have been able to attract a lot of these companies to Sacramento, because usually they used to go to Silicon Valley, San Francisco Bay Area, San Diego, or LA. Right now, we're building the critical mass. We are being known as a clean tech region, which the mayor and the governor want to call the Emerald region for the green. If we look at wind, wind is even more erratic. It goes up and down depending on the power of the wind, gusts going in. We see a lot of these new wind generating mills and the turbines inside of them. As the wind gusts come in or as the continuous breeze moves through, we're able to generate electricity, but as you see, it's all erratic. So we need to have inverters that are connected nearby here in order to clean up the signal, to have a nice clean signal that can be sent through our electric grid and eventually into the home. The electric energy components then are, again, we see here the power plant. I'll even use the pointer here. Power plant generates the electricity. We see a transformer that steps up the voltage for transmission. It gets transmitted through all of these very high towers. It eventually comes to a neighborhood transformer and into the power poles that eventually goes near your home, and you have another smaller transformer that brings in the electricity at the level that we can use, that our appliances can use. Now, I grew up in Mexico, and the signals were not very clean back then. we had to have, for every different electrical appliance, a regulator or a little transformer. Those things would heat up tremendously because power was coming in at all sorts of different levels, and what it needed to do was to transform that voltage into voltage that would not burn the appliance. If we didn't do it that way, the dryer, the washer machines, the televisions would all burn. And I'm sure some of you that have a little bit of grayer hair or no hair at all remember those times here in the United States as well. So what is the smart grid? The smart grid really is an evolution. It is not something that we're just going to be able to turn on and say, okay, now we have smart grid here. Today what we see is that we are deploying smart meters. SMUD has so far deployed almost 100,000 smart meters on their way to 600 smart meters throughout the Sacramento region. PG&E has distributed almost 3 million smart meters on their way to, I believe, somewhere in the order of 6 million smart meters. The next thing is that we're going to have some outage management, because we are going to be able to tell when an outage occurs in a home. Right now, if the power in your home goes off, the utility company has no way of knowing that you've lost power. The only way that they can tell is when 10 or 15 conscious citizens call in, and they are able to triangulate by knowing where those homes are and try to zero in where it is, and then send crews with flashlights to see if they can detect any problem along the lines or any problem in the transformers. It's happened right in the back of my house. I had the guy and go and look and says, man, I don't see any critters back there. You know, this is something that will now be much more modernized, because we're going to have sensors and we're going to have controls all over the place. We will be able to zero in immediately when an outage occurs. We are trying to introduce electric cars and plug-in hybrids as much as we can. But if we were able to bring, as the video said, 90% of the consumers into electric vehicles, we would go into total chaos, because we are not prepared to be able to house that many electric vehicles right now. The smart grid will little by little be able to do it. We will be introducing distributed generation, that is solar, PV, and wind, hopefully, in most of the homes, and added to whatever energy is being transmitted to our regions. The next 2 or 3 years, what we're going to see is empower the users into the energy through the home area networks. That is, I think, when we're going to see the consumers really feeling the impact of this. You're going to be able to have devices inside your home that will be able to tell how much energy you're using. I am not going to have to chase after my daughters and tell them to turn off the TV and the fans or the air conditioning, because I will be able to tell readily through my Palm Pilot. I will be able to tell through my handheld device what is happening, even when I'm in New York and not knowing why that one day we spent so much energy. And they know they're in trouble already. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we will have distributed generation. A lot more is happening right now. Again, in Sacramento, we're looking at solar farms all over the place, and we're happy to work with all of these people little by little. Right now, SMUD, in collaboration with Aerojet, have a solar farm that is generating somewhere in the order of 5.5 megawatts, which is tremendous help to our communities. And we're going to be able to deploy more storage systems, that is, those batteries that we're going to need, not only at the substations, but also in the homes, in order for you to be able to save your own energy and then be able to use it when you need it. And finally, the automated demand response. That is, when the electric company tells you, watch out, we are in high peak, we need to move forward, we're going to start charging you a lot more, that will be automated demand response, and it'll be up to you to use caution and to shed some of the load. But there's going to be some places, especially Sacramento State, that is going to help shed a lot of load. The Inside the home, we will see something like an energy management gateway that will look very similar to your cable device, which will be connected to the smart meter. Those will be connected through the internet and web-based access for anybody to be able to use. The energy management will be able to be connected to cameras outside your home for security. You'll be able to connect, of course, through your wireless router devices. Now we're going to be using IP phones. All of that will be connected, but also all of your other devices, lighting, appliances, TVs, and HVAC will be controlled through here. And right now we're working to figure out what should be the protocols, what should be the communication standards that we work on. Because people don't want to invest in a product that is no longer going to be used next year. Similar to what the battles back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s when Sony Betamax and the VHS were working to compete with each other. People were investing on both sides. Eventually, Sony lost, the Beta's gone, and now VCRs are there. A very important thing is that whenever we are sending radio signals and wireless signals, we are exposed to hacking by anybody. Jeff Williams here and Isaac Gansa here, they are both integral parts of what Sacramento State does in cybersecurity, because we're also trying to protect information that our students have. We don't want any social security numbers out there. We don't want sensitive data to be out there. And universities are typically fairly vulnerable to attacks. So we have to have cybersecurity experts to ensure that people will not come in and hack our systems. The President's cyberspace policy says that as the United States deploys new smart grid technology, the federal government must ensure that security standards are developed and adopted to avoid creating unexpected opportunities for adversaries or terrorists or hackers to penetrate these systems or conduct large-scale attacks. Democrat House member Bernie Thompson from Mississippi, who is in the House Committee for Homeland Security, says the electric grid is highly dependent on computer-based control systems. These systems are increasingly connected to open networks such as the internet, exposing them to cyber risks. And any failure along this way will create havoc for us. Fortunately, here at Sacramento State, we have a Center for Information Assurance and Security, which has a designation by the National Security Agency and the Department of Homeland Security as a Center of Academic Excellence. Not only are we developing the cyber guardians of the future through our students, but we are also providing great new technologies and great new methodologies to ensure that cyberspace remains a safe haven for all of us, because nowadays we do all through the internet, especially banking. Isaac Gansa is a professor in computer science. He is an integral part of the California Smart Grid Center, and he's also the director of this center. So some of the current research projects that we're doing, we're working on cybersecurity. We're developing the roadmap for smart grid in collaboration with the California Energy Commission. We are looking at how to integrate some of these renewables, wind and solar. We're building to grid technology. How can we generate energy in a building through solar or PV or wind, and then send it back into the grid and charge for that usage and help the utility to generate less energy and less impact to our environment. At Sac State right now, we received a good infusion of dollars from the federal government to start a smart grid investment project. And we are going to see, this is an aerial view of our campus. This is our latest facility right over here, which is, oh no, it should be closer over here actually. This is land that we also own. But throughout Sacramento State, we will be bringing in all the new technologies, and we will be a guinea pig, a demonstration site of how smart grid is used and all the different advantages of smart grid. The four main components that we're going to have here is first an energy management and control system. So we're going to have computer programs that are going to look at how energy is used in all of the buildings around the campus and be able to try to optimize its use. Electronic metering, in order to be able to do that, we're going to have smart meters in all of the buildings. So we are installing them as we speak. Electric grid reliability. We're going to have sensors and make sure that the power that we're generating and that we're sending to the buildings is of high quality. And finally, we're going to have plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, charging stations. There's going to be something in the order of 30 to 35 charging stations throughout the campus. And hopefully, as the demand for the usage of those stations increases, we will be able to expand our efforts. So, when we came up to the California Energy Commission, and I told them I want to build a smart grid center, the first thing that I was told is, no, there's no funding ever coming to Sacramento State. And I said, oh, why? Well, one of our professors, who I'm happy to report is no longer here, had received funding from the Energy Commission, had never completed the report, he just got paid and walked away. So one bad apple can really ruin the entire barrel. And this is a great example of that. It took us 2 years to be able to get the confidence of the California Energy Commission, and again, through Mike Gravely, Steve Godari, and colleagues like him, we've been able to now forge a great commitment. And when Berkeley, UC Davis, UC San Diego, and Stanford come to the Energy Commission and say, why did you give Sacramento State the Smart Grid Center? We've been telling them because we are the perfect choice. We have the best program in power engineering in the state of California, the only master's program in power engineering in the state of California. We have a cybersecurity center to die for with good qualified individuals, and we're building more faculty in that area. And we have a tradition of research in renewable energy. Those three are the main components of smart grid. So I like to brag and say, yes, in fact, we are the perfect choice. Some of the list of our professors, our faculty members here, some of them have written the books, the textbooks, that are used not only in this country but abroad, translated to many different languages, that are used for transmission, generation, distribution, and all of it that has to do with power engineering. We have a strong group in cybersecurity as well, and we're building our program again in renewable energy. So the mission of the California Smart Grid Center is that we will engage in product testing. We want to have vendors come in and tell us, here's our device. Could you tell us whether what we're claiming is exactly what's happening? The center aims to inform the development of real-time pricing, which is what I talked about before, from an unbiased proving ground. Because real-time pricing, if you tell a utility that you go ahead and lead it, the ratepayers are not going to believe them. So we need to have an unbiased proving ground to test all those technologies, and hopefully that's who we are. The center will also work in support of California's utilities to support the development of the highly desired upgrades to the nation's electric grid, and hence the creation of the smart grid. And finally, the most important part of what we do at Sacramento State is that we build the workforce for the future. Our students are our top academic and scholastic product. We have certificate courses that we've been building more and more. Dr. Suresh Vadva from the Department of Electrical Engineering, the chair and integral part of the Smart Grid Center, is now trying to develop a lot of these different courses in power engineering and smart grid to be delivered over the internet. Online courses that people will be able to sign and take from the convenience of your home. We have a lot of courses, again, in cybersecurity, including computer attacks, countermeasures, computer forensics and principles and practices, cryptography, which is very important. And we have courses in heating and air conditioning, solar energy, high efficiency HVAC. Our power engineering laboratories are continued to be upgraded. These stations like this which is where our students do their work, look very similar to the infrastructure that the utilities have, because not much of it has changed. The only thing that we have now changed is that a lot of these analog signals and dial readings are now, we're able to have interfaces and be able to control them through computers. Our students are working in our laboratories. We have a tremendously diverse group of students, and I tell you, whenever a student graduates from our programs, they are picked up immediately. And while right now we're seeing tremendous rates of unemployment in the area of 11 and 12%, for students graduating in these programs, they are being fought over for their skills. So what I would like to say is that, can we help create the smart grid of the future? Can we help develop the future generations of engineers and scientists who will help us combat global warming and promote economic growth? And as I told President Obama a year ago, yes, we can. Si se puede. Thank you all very much for your attention, and I am happy to take a few questions. We've gone about 5 or 10 minutes over time, but I'm here to answer any questions. Thanks a lot. Yes, sir.
At present, as I understand, PG&E does not offer generous payment for photovoltaic generation in excess of home uses. Pretty pressure to encourage them to pay, let's say, the price of
Yeah. I'm not going to speak on behalf of PG&E. They're good colleagues of ours. We've worked with them. They certainly have their media issues that are going on out there. But I agree with you. They're not paying the rates that SMUD is paying. SMUD right now has a portfolio of about 20% renewable energy already on their books. So they're well ahead of the curve. PG&E is somewhere in the 6 to 7%. So the pressure is definitely going to continue. Now, I don't know if they're waiting to see what happens with Proposition 23. I don't think so, because they're very much on board with this. But their business plan is such that they will bring in a lot more renewables. And in order to do that, they're going to have to rely on distributed generation. They're going to have to rely on the homeowners that want to have in their, maybe not even just on their rooftops, but even at their yard, in their parking spots, shading parking with PV, because the pressure is going to increase. If you were going to meet the needs, what AB 32 calls for, that by 2020, and by the way, I should say that today, as I was driving in, I heard the news from Mary Nichols, Director of CARB, California Air Resources Board, that now it's been approved that 33% of energy, of electric energy, will come from renewables by 2030. So they have stepped it up, and we're not backing off from that commitment. Is it going to be costly to the utilities? Probably. Is it going to be costly to the consumers? I certainly hope not. But yes, we may need to invest a little bit. But those folks that are being proactive and are bringing PV and those resources into their homes, they're going to be the ones that are going to be selling this at 30 and 40 cents a kilowatt hour, especially at peak times. So yes, the answer is yes. I think that the pressures are going to be building for them to increase their access to renewable resources. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dr. McCarty. For the layperson here, how long can the typical utilities transformer system utilities actually store electricity before being used by the consumer?
It is as you generate it and you transmit it and you distribute it, it has to be used. So there is no storage currently. And that is one of the problems, that we're generating, if we generate in excess, a lot of it that is wasted. So the great importance of storage is really there right now. Unfortunately, we are at a time in science and technology that we are not able to build the batteries that we need today. Lithium-ion batteries were a great advance. I mean, they moved us forward, but we're still there. We're stuck right now with our knowledge and abilities in chemistry and physics to be able to move it to the next step. Once we're able to beat that barrier, knock that barrier down, I think that battery usage will be increasingly used, will be become affordable, because we all know, I mean, from all our devices, batteries eventually run down. You can only have but so many cycles going back before they're dead, and their efficiency diminishes quickly. There is a reduction in its efficiency. So battery technology right now is one of the big challenges in this country. And in 2 weeks, I'm going to be in Southern California for a meeting with some of the top scientists and engineers. Mostly it's going to be engineers, really, from all over the country, MIT, Harvard, Yale, Southern Cal, Caltech, all of them discussing, what is it called? The conference is called Challenges in Engineering, 2010 Large Challenges in Engineering. And one of the 6 topics is exactly battery storage. Yes.
System in our country, as it's generated, how much is lost in the transmission process?
Walt, would you be able to give us something in that?
It varies depending on the age of the infrastructure. It varies across the country, but it's 5%, something like that. But the transmission level, I don't know if distribution varies more.
See, when you generate something and over the transmission, there's attenuation. Through all those wires, even though the thick ones at high voltage, we are losing. There's leakages. It's almost like if we had a gas pipe flowing and it's losing gas all along, or a water pipe and it's losing. That's what happens during the transmission. So up to 5% just is lost like that. Yeah. Question, and then was there one back there? Yes. Yes, ma'am. And then.
On the slide from Lawrence Livermore Laboratory, there was on the side, on the right, a gray area called projected electricity, which you didn't address. I'm wondering if it's related to what's being talked about.
And that is exactly, yeah.
I think that must include a lot more stuff, which is things like heat losses,
Yes.
vampires,
Yes.
do I see what you're
Yes.
talking about? Things that essentially energy is being consumed to no work purpose.
So, but it is wasted energy that we generated at some point, and that if it was generated by fossil fuel plants, went into the atmosphere and did nothing for the consumer except to be wasted. So again, there's a lot of room for us to be more efficient, and the new technologies will do it. Yes, sir.
My name is Dick Boyd. Mr. McCarty, is it? I missed your name, but electricity doesn't store too well. This is a nanosecond. Okay, speed of light about 11 inches a nanosecond. That's about how long you can store electricity. So the key is to find the things that you can store that electricity produces, like coal. You make ice at night, and then you use it during the day to cool your place. You pump water at night so that you have water pressure during the day, and shut the water pumps off during the day. That's for municipalities, the way they run their operation. You try to level load. You know what I mean by level load? You got the concept? Think of a snake. Snake is, when it's laying on the ground, long skinny thing. What he's showing you up there is that snake ate a pig. And it's got indigestion. It's got a big lump in it. The idea is to cut that pig in little pieces. So that 2 o'clock in the morning, you give him 50 pounds to eat. You pump all your water at 2 o'clock in the morning. You heat, once that water is pumped up, you turn all your hot water heaters on, and you got 40 gallons of storage or something?
Absolutely.
Okay, you store it. So you're level loading everything you've got. Now, that's not so much the engineering as the engineering is there to do it. It's the public will
Yes.
to do it, it's the Public Utilities Commission's effort, and I think that you have a pretty good program here at Sac State, and what SMUD is doing, and it's a very nice program. Thank you for running this.
Oh, thank you very much for your comment. Let me make a comment about that too. The Department of Water Resources in California, which gathers all the water that we produce up here in Northern California, the nature produces all in Northern California, through the snowpack and the melting throughout the year. And the Department of Water Resources distributes this water all the way through Southern California. If it wasn't for this great water pack here, they would never be able to survive in San Diego and LA. Certainly not at the numbers that they have with that traffic. Now, in order to send this water down to LA, there's a lot of hills and valleys that it needs to go up and down from. So they need to pump the water. In that canal that we see as we're driving down to LA, it is not just a naturally flowing because we're a higher elevation is moving down there. It goes through a lot of locks and dams that needs to have the water pumped and then stored in there, and then little by little, by elevation, gets distributed down. By the way, they are the largest consumer of energy in the state of California. But they produce 2/3 of their own energy. Their own electricity is produced by them. How do they do it? They have a lot of dams that are sitting up top that have a lot of water. At night, when energy is cheap because it's plentiful, they pump up water all the way up to the top of the dam, and during the day, during peak hours, they let it flow down and generate electricity. They sell it back. Well, do they sell it to the ISO?
They actually sell both, the electricity that they generate, I'm not sure they actually sell. They participate on the load side of the market because of their pumps away from you.
They're actually not allowed to make money. If they were allowed to make money, they would be an industry to reckon with.
You guys use it all the health plants for their other pump storage facilities owned by other people in Southern California.
As you're driving up to Yosemite, you will see one of the biggest projects in this area, pump and storage. So instead of batteries, what they do, the storage that they have, is with the water. Water at high elevation, and when it's needed, they release it and put it through turbines. And those turbines, as the water pressure is coming down at high pressure, it is spinning those turbines, generating electricity. So they know how to do it, and if you want to see a super cool war room, almost like Wall Street, you go here in Sacramento on Watt Avenue to their war room, that it is an entire room this big with every single dam and the entire canal going down to Southern California, and every single generator along the way. They have computer controls. It is a beautiful thing to see. And it is Department of Water Resources. Who would know that they're one of the largest generators of electricity in this state? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So the smart meters allow for the time of day metering. I got that from a technology standpoint.
Yeah, so you're able to read things, yeah.
But what's required to make that actually happen? Do we need regulation or policy changes to have time of day pricing?
Well, that will eventually happen. Yeah, the smart meters are nothing more than computers that are able to receive signals and send signals. So they're able to tell the utility company how much electricity, rather than have that fellow that used to come and bother your dogs in the backyard with their sticks so the dogs wouldn't bite them and read the meter. Those folks are no longer needed. At the same time, that can send information inside the home for the home area networks. Now, it will come a time, and I don't think in the very distant future, where utilities are going to say now that we have control over this, and now we've always known that electricity is not the same price all day long. You know, it is, you have sales at JCPenney's. Sometimes things are more expensive than other times. Oil is more expensive sometimes. Gasoline. The same thing goes for electricity. At certain times of the day, it's going to be, the demand is much higher, and it's a supply and demand game, just like anything else in a capitalistic society. So if it is a lot more demand and the supply is the same, the cost is going to go up. If the demand is down and the supply is the same, the cost goes down. Hopefully what it will do, it is not going to be something that the utilities take advantage of that to gouge on the rate users. And that's the great worry, that Big Brother's going to be watching over our shoulders, and that's the great worry that the smart meters are too intrusive, they're giving too much information. But tell you the truth, that's the only way to do it. That is the only way that we're going to be able to curtail use during that time, because nobody else knows. Right now, I live in Carmichael. They finally have installed water meters in my neighborhood. I mean, I come from Mexico City. Water to Mexico City gets shipped from outside. Water in Mexico City is more expensive than gold. It is something that we all value. When we see a puddle of water in the street, we're like, oh, who spilled water out there, And every morning when I leave to go to work, I see water just running down the gutters because nobody cares about it. Why? There's no meters. And we are humans, and we have our faults. And people that are not forced to abide by a certain law will go around it as much as possible. So I think that that the time of rate is going to be a good thing. It is going to be impacting our operations, but for the benefit of humanity, I think. One last question. Eddie Guerra, by the way, distinguished alumni from our electrical engineering department. He was the president of the Association of Students Incorporated here at Sac State, and now works in the legislature, and he is a staffer for Assembly Member Furtani, who sits in the Energy and Utility. So he's the man. All right, Eddie.
Just a question. One is, will the Smart Center Sac State be working with the Department of Economics to look at consumer impacts or benefit cost analysis? And then two, with that, will you guys be looking, if in a perfect scenario, a single family dwelling homeowner who equips their home with a solar PV system, they may be able to recoup their benefits. Will there be any analysis to look at whether that an equal ratepayer who is a moderate or low income, who lives in an apartment, be able to recoup their investment in the system? Because in the end, we may have a single family dwelling that may actually benefit greatly from that, while we have an equal ratepayer who will be consistently paying for the infrastructure.
So when I said you're the man, let me tell you, you're thinking presidential. Alex Gonzalez already told me last week, he says, Amir, now that we've built the Smart Grid Center and we got all the technologies and all the scientific side going, we need not to expand it for other areas at Sac State. We need to bring in the business community, the economics folks, and create a center that is also able to provide information to the consumers and to the citizens of Sacramento. So that's where we're going to be going the next. I know that there's a lot of companies working in that area. There are, for example, there's one from alums from Sac State, Residential Control Systems, RCS, that is in Rancho Cordova. Those guys are building equipment that is so advanced right now that people haven't been able to use it. They have touch screens to be able to tell what's happening inside your home already, to be able to tell what devices are really causing you to spend a lot of money. And they are providing a business plan to homeowners to say, okay, you bring in all these devices and you bring in your solar. What we're able to do is your return on investment is going to be 5 years or 7 years, and create the incentives for the market to go. As that happens, then the economy in Sacramento is going to grow, businesses are going to grow, my students here at Sacramento State are going to be employed. And I think that that's what a university should be doing. We should be working closely with the local community, local industry, but also with legislatures, both at the state level, since we're here in Sacramento, but also with the city and county, to make sure that what the benefits of a state institution of higher education are beyond just the education of its students. There has to be value added. And when we do that, I bet you the governor and all of the legislators will send the money that we need in higher education to be able to teach, because, budget cuts are killing us. But yes, good question. All right, with that, I think it's 7:30, and I thank you all very much for your attention, for staying here.